Do you want to learn how to use and apply Elliott Wave? In this tutorial series, I will tell you everything about Elliott Wave. We want to start today with the basics. We want to start with the impulse structure. I will tell you everything about the impulse structure, which is an Elliott Wave pattern, and I will show you the NVIDIA chart. We'll take it as a small case study, and I will show you how to apply wave counting of an impulse to a live chart. Let's go. Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Ben. I'm the founder of MCO Global, and here at MCO Global we take a look at price charts from an Elliott Wave point of view. We apply the Elliott Wave method. We have developed it a little bit further over the years. Obviously you need to stay up to date with market developments, markets develop as well. So Elliott Wave also kind of develops a little bit, at least in certain ways. We're not breaking any rules, but we have developed additional guidelines which narrow down probabilities, which give us an additional edge in the markets. So what we want to do in this video series is we want to take a look at Elliott Wave, and we want to take a look at the different concepts. We want to take a look at the different patterns. So if you're interested in further Elliott Wave tutorial videos, maybe also with practical application bits, let me know in the comments. What my goal is that you all can understand what Elliott Wave is. It is a very complex market analysis method, can be used for trading as well. If you use Elliott Wave and you put the work in to understand it, then it will change your view on markets for life. But my goal is that you learn it, that you understand it, so that you also understand better what our analysis means, how to apply our analysis as well. So let's take a look at a few slides. I want to tell you first of all about the theory behind Elliott Wave impulses, what they are, just 4 to 5 slides, and then we'll take a look at a live chart. But what you find mostly here on YouTube is just theory. So you'll find just the theoretical concepts that you find in books as well. But I think what adds additional value to this analysis is that we take a look at a live chart as well. Obviously, I'm looking at hundreds of charts every single week, so I can show, I have a good understanding of which chart is moving in an impulse currently. So we'll take a look at the NVIDIA chart. What we really need to do first, before we dive further into the concept of an impulse structure, it is important to start with the bigger picture, right? What do we have actually? There are 2 basic types of structures in Elliott Wave, and everything else falls into place below them. So we've got the motive waves, and the impulse structure is a motive wave. The so-called diagonal pattern as well. We don't want to talk about diagonals today. Yeah, this is something we're going to do in future videos. We also don't want to take a look at corrective waves today, but we'll kind of take a quick look. Corrective waves are also, they can be categorized in zigzag corrections, flats, triangles, combination patterns. But essentially, what I want to make you understand is there are motive waves and corrective waves. Now you might ask, okay, what's the difference? Now it's quite simple. Motive waves move into the direction of the main trend. Yeah, you could either say they either follow the main trend or they are the main trend, right? So it's either they provide the trend, they are the trend, or they follow the trend. Different approaches here, but essentially they are going in line with the larger degree trend. So that's a motive wave. And that means it needs to have a certain amount of waves and a certain series, if we talk about an uptrend, a certain series of higher highs and higher lows. You cannot have a motive wave with 3 waves. How is it going to work, right? You can't have a high, a higher low, and a higher high, but something is missing. That's not an uptrend. An uptrend, for example, needs a higher high, a higher low, and another higher high, and another higher low, and another higher high. Then you've got 5 waves, and that is essentially this 5-wave pattern that you see here on the chart. It's a motive wave that can be an impulse. It can be a diagonal. I don't want to talk about the difference too much today, but for example, in an impulse, what you have here is wave 1 and wave 4. They must not overlap, because an impulse is a very aggressive trend. In this case, it would be an uptrend. In a diagonal, they can overlap, and we will talk about that more in the chapter about diagonals. But yeah, this is a 5-wave move. It's a motive wave. And as I said, a motive wave can be an impulse or a diagonal. What you see here specifically is actually an impulse. And what that means, we will discuss in a few minutes. Then the corrective wave follows. So after a 5-wave move up in the trend direction, we usually get a correction. And that's a counter trend move. And these corrections are messy. They can different shapes. They can take different shapes and sizes. They can be very complex, and they will be difficult to trade. However, at the same time, the corrective wave offers a really good entry point, but we'll talk about that. Now, it is just important to understand that motive waves, they are not necessarily an uptrend. A motive wave can also go down, because in a bull market, the trend is up, so the motive wave goes up. In a bear market, the motive wave goes down. It's a bit more complicated than that, but here in the beginning, for this first video of this series, that should be enough. Okay, now that we know what a motive wave is, it's a 5-wave move and it moves in the direction of the trend. Let's take a look at the impulse structures. You see it here on the right-hand side in a little bit more detail. Impulse waves are a primary pattern in Elliott Wave Theory. It is the pattern. It is the pattern. We're always looking for impulses. If you're wondering why in the videos, in my analysis, I'm always looking for impulses, well, see, it is just the main pattern. It indicates where the trend is going. It is the cleanest pattern with very clear parameters, and it is the pattern that is really easy to trade. Okay, it's really easy to trade. We don't have many of them, yeah, and in today's markets, they get rarer and rarer. But again, we don't want to take every trade just because we want to trade a chart. We want to wait for those high quality setups. We want to be picky. And we want to wait for those impulses for a high probability trade. Now you can trade everything, but should you trade everything? That's a different question. Okay, so they are primary pattern and they characterize the progress of the market. See, an impulse always generates progress. There is progress in an impulse. There is no progress in a correction. The correction pauses the progress. There's no progress there. It's just correcting the progress. 2 steps forward, 1 step back essentially. These impulses consist of 5 subwaves. So you've got wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, wave 5. I already explained. You need that series of higher highs and higher lows. It's like everywhere in nature, right? Nature will always look for the simplified, for the most simple form of structure to do something, right? So here, for example, I mean, you could have more waves, but do you need more? No, you only need 5 waves. So you need the basic form of 5 waves to generate a trend. I mean, why would there need to be more, right? We just need 5. Occasionally you get extensions. Again, that might be something for other videos. We'll talk about that a little bit today as well. But you basically, within this structure, you have 5 waves. So again, you have wave 1, wave 2, 3, 4, 5. You already see that they look a little bit different. In this structure, which is a 5-wave move, you see that also in wave 1, you have 5 waves, right? So you see what you have here in large, you have in small as well. That's the concept of fractals. So that's the concept that you have in Elliott Wave. You have these patterns everywhere on the very large time frames, on the very small time frames. It all links back to market sentiment, to mass sentiment, human psychology. So you find everything on different time frames, yeah? Now you might not want to trade every time frame. Again, that's a personal decision. So we have 5 waves up. That's again an impulse. So within a larger impulse, wave 1 is ideally an impulse as well. It can be a diagonal. It has to be a motive wave because it's a 5-wave move, right? So wave 1 in a larger impulse can be an impulse or a diagonal. The wave 2 is correcting that motive wave. So you have a pullback. Essentially a pullback, which from a trading point of view, but we don't want to talk too much about that today, that's for a different video, is a great setup. Yeah, why is it a great setup? To buy the wave 2, because the 3rd wave, as you can see, is usually in most markets the longest wave, the most aggressive one. Now, the 3rd wave has to be an impulse in an impulse. The 3rd wave cannot be a diagonal, all right? So this has to be an impulse. It is a structure which is typically the most aggressive one. It's typically the structure where a lot of FOMO is found in the markets, and then people will take profits typically at the end of the 3rd wave. Then the 4th wave is another correction. Waves 2 and 4 are corrections, and waves 1, 3, and 5 are motive waves. So the 5th wave also has to be a motive wave in 5 waves. And it can be a diagonal, an ending diagonal, or an impulse. So it's always that structure in an impulse, 5, 3, 5, 3, 5. That's it. That's the basic pattern. Now, then again, you go into the subwave structures, and for example, here in the small first wave of the first wave, you would also find most likely 5 waves, right? Okay, so that's the general impulse pattern. And the impulse obviously follows the main trend, while the corrective waves represent counter movements. And in a bull market, impulse waves move upwards. In a bear market, they move downwards. And we always look for these. They are our lighthouse on the charts. Now let's take a look at rules. This is the basic set of rules. There are not many rules in Elliott Wave. There are many guidelines though, not so many rules. And it is important to understand these, not to make basic mistakes. Now, wave 2 never retraces more than 100% of wave 1, or there wouldn't be any progress, right? That's quite simple. So it must not break below the beginning of wave 1. Wave 3 must not be the shortest wave of all 3, 1, 2, and 3, of all 3 impulse waves. Okay, waves 1 and 5 can be a diagonal, but let's say of all 3 motive waves, wave 3 must not be the shortest. It doesn't need to be the longest. Many people think it has to be the longest. That's not the case. Sometimes, for example, in metals, the 5th wave is often the longest, but it must not be the shortest. The wave 4 does not overlap with the price territory of wave 1. Okay, so you can't have that. And yeah, these are basically the rules, right? And Elliott wave patterns are fractal, and I already mentioned that they are self-similar across different scales. So you find the same patterns on the smallest time frames. If I open the third of a third wave, you would have again 5 waves. And within wave 1, there are 5 waves, and in wave 5, there are 5 waves. The market cycles in waves of different sizes, so you have the different sizes, different patterns, different degrees. We talk about wave degrees, right? You have different sizes, different degrees, from large supercycles that can span decades, years to decades, to tiny so-called sub-minuet waves, very small, tiny, low wave degrees on the smallest time frames. So again, you can find it on different time frames and degrees. Now, another concept I want to talk about before we go to the live chart is the concept of an extension. And you will see that on the example chart, you will see that on the NVIDIA chart. You have different extensions. And that is stuff for a different separate video, but I want to explain it to you already so you've heard about it. The wave extension. So occasionally, or typically, let's say typically, you get an extension. That means in theory, you could have a wave 1 and a wave 3 and a wave 5 of similar length, but typically one is extended. That just is related to market sentiment. In metals, it's typically the 5th wave. In crypto and many markets, actually, it's typically the 3rd wave. I rarely see an extended first wave. I really rarely see an extended first wave, but you get these extensions. Now you might ask, okay, what is an extension? An extension just means that you have difficulties to distinguish between these waves in the extension and the larger degrees. Now, if you take a look here at the one extension in wave 3 on the left-hand side, it's an uptrend. And this might be very familiar. You see that very often in crypto. You have a small wave 1 and a wave 2, and you have your 3rd wave, a 4th, and the 5th. Now, the 3rd wave itself has 5 very clear and large waves as well. So it is typically in practice very difficult to say, okay, is this wave 4 within a larger 3rd wave, or is it the main 4th wave? Yeah? Essentially, you get more waves than 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you can have 9 waves in an extension. Yeah? You could even have wave 3 and 5 extended, and you get even more waves. But again, it all comes down to the standard 5-wave pattern. Important to understand here is that it's typically one wave that's extended, and it is in practice difficult to distinguish between the different wave degrees when you get these extensions, but that is also in practice not so important when you're trading it. And again, you can see here that also wave 5 can be extended, and very often in the metals market, and you can see on the left-hand side the uptrend, and you can see the same works in the downtrend. Okay, now let's take a look at the NVIDIA chart. So for the educational aspect, I think it's worth showing you a live chart as well. This is the NVIDIA chart. Now, it looks completely different to what you see in theory, but actually, if you get familiar with it, you see the patterns. And what I'll do here now is obviously just to show you quickly how to do it and how to help you see it actually in the charts. There is much more to labeling charts than just placing the labels visually somewhere. It's all about using Fibonacci extensions and retracements as well to identify which wave pattern, because often there are different interpretations, but which of these different interpretations is most likely the correct one. So you have to make sure you find the one that applies really best to the standard guidelines of Elliott Wave Theory. And that is what can take hours. So what we do here is just, because I know the chart, I just want to show you visually how such a chart looks like, yeah, and how an impulse looks like. We don't want to go through all the, how do we do the labeling of the subwaves. That's something that we will build on in this channel. And as I said, if you're interested in further tutorials, if you want to learn Elliott Wave here on this channel, then let me know in the comments, okay? Now, typically when we start with labeling, we'll start on the larger time frame. And we've got initially a wave 1. Okay, so we've got a first rally in wave 1. We have a first larger time frame, wave 2. This here takes obviously some work. We'll take a look at that in a minute, but we have a 3, and we have a wave 4 and a wave 5. So first of all, it makes sense to just place the overall context of waves. That's what we have to do first. The overall bigger picture. Okay, we can still move them, but we typically say that, okay, we have a very, very aggressive uptrend that's typically a third wave. Then we have to, however, take a look at the smaller time frame patterns as well. This is very, very important. So it's the smaller degree, the smaller time frame. And what we can see here is another wave 1, and here we talk about the extensions, wave 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm just changing the wave degree. You can do that here on trading. You go to settings, you change the wave degree. It's just important that we have a wave degree that it shows the relationship between the waves. That's very important. And then we have within this third wave also 5 waves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you see that the third wave is clearly the extended one. And even the third wave, the larger third wave, has 5 distinct waves. So you see it can be in practice quite difficult to label this, because if you don't understand the concept of extensions, you will have difficulties to label this. But if we know that the longest part is normally the third of a third wave, and then you see I've got a wave 1, I've got a wave 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I've got 5 waves here. The longest part seems like a third wave, all right? So I've got the third wave here, larger degree. All right, before that, I've got another 1, 2. I've got here 4th wave, 5th wave. Okay, I've got 5 waves. This is the larger third wave. And in the beginning, I've got this 1, 2, okay? And there's just 1 more 4, 5 missing on the larger time frame. Magic. But yeah, it's a bit more complicated than that. But I think it is just helpful to see it in practice. Now, a few things I want to mention here. It does make sense when you actually do it, you have to go into the subwaves and label these to understand if you're breaking any rules. It is also important to use the Fibonacci levels for understanding if you actually do it the right way. Because there are some guidelines as well that we will talk about in future videos. Now, for example, we talked about the concept of wave 1 can be a diagonal. I would see this here as a leading diagonal, for example, where we have ABC in wave 1. Wave 2, I've got ABC in wave 3, got a wave 4, and ABC in wave 5. It's a very clear, beautiful leading diagonal, one that you often find in textbooks with an ascending wedge shape. Just to show you, yeah. And when a diagonal breaks down, it's typically quite fast. This here, for example, the wave 2 is a so-called flat correction. Again, you get this information from tracking the subwave structures, really going into the micro patterns. We don't want to talk about corrections too much today, but I think some general tips. We start on the macro. Context is everything in Elliott Wave. We start the wave count at the all-time low. Context is everything, so we start from the large from the larger time frame and we go into the smaller time frames, like peeling an onion, right? You go from the larger and then you work your way to the inside in stages. I would always do that, and at the end this gives you the context, and then you can just verify that on the smaller time frame, and you track the microstructures. At some point, it's not about having the perfect Elliott wave count. That's what many people, that's where street smart beats book smart, because you get a lot of people like, it needs to be this, and but there, whatever. No, it's about having an Elliott wave count that actually works for trading, right? I mean, we're doing market analysis, so it's useful for trading. You can spend hours on a chart, and you haven't made a trade. You want to get to a point where you say, this is good enough for me to have the information that I have that is good for risk management and for placing a trade. And that's the main purpose, right? We don't want to earn here a doctoral degree in Elliott wave counting, right? It would be a good idea though. But no, we don't want to do that. It's not about winning an academic prize here. It's about having something that is practical. We want to be pragmatic about it. Yeah, it's the same with trading. You don't want to be perfect. Yeah, perfectionism it will kill you in trading. It's about being good enough. Having a setup that's good enough, and having a chart that's good enough for trading. Right. I'd rather look at 3 to 4 different charts to have something that I can work with than trying to go to the 15-minute chart and I don't care. Like when I want to trade up here, I don't care what happened here. Do I really need to really try to spend an hour on trying to figure out the micro counts? I mean, yeah, you can do, but at that point I would have made 3 trades. Yeah, okay, you get what I mean. Yeah, and then obviously it's about rather having a detailed count for what's currently happening, right? For what's currently happening, you want to have a detailed wave count there. So you want to label this, and then you want to label the subwave structures as well. But that's enough for today. I hope that's helpful. Let me know in the comments if you like content like that, or as I said in previous updates, because this is a new channel, we want to experiment a little bit with different content. So let me know what interests you most. I see it in the views as well. I mean, if there are not enough views, not enough likes, I know you don't like it. So I'll rather skip content like that, right? Because essentially this channel is for you. It's about bringing people together. It's about helping you as well to become more successful in Elliott wave trading and understanding our analysis. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.